The Senate will come to order. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Senators Bridges, Buckner, Coleman, I saw him earlier. Coleman,
Excused.
Cook, Coram,
Here.
Danielson, Danielson,
Good morning.
Donovan, Fields, Gardner, Janal, Gonzalez, Hansen, Henriksen, Heisey, Holbert, Jaquez Lewis, Kirkmeyer, Kolker, Lee, Liston, Lundeen, Moreno, Pedersen,
Here.
Priola, Rankin, Rodriguez, Scott,
Excused.
Simpson, Smallwood, Sonnenberg,
Good morning.
Story,
Here.
Winter, I saw her earlier. Winter,
Excused.
Woodward, Zenzinger, Coleman, President? Mr. President,
Here. The morning roll call is 33 present, 0 absent, 2 excused. We have a quorum. Will the good senator from Fort Collins please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Thank you, Mr. President. Members and guests, please join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Approval of the journal, Senator Henriksen.
I move that the reading of the Journal of Tuesday, March 8, 2022 be dispensed with and the journal be approved as corrected by the Secretary.
You have heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it, and that motion is adopted. Senate Services.
Correctly printed Senate Bill 150, 151, 152. Correctly engrossed Senate Bill 009, 103. Senate Joint Resolution 005. Correctly re-engrossed Senate Bill 113. Correctly revised House Bill 1073. Correctly re-revised House Bill 1071. Correctly enrolled Senate Bill 056.
Will the clerk please add Senator Winter to the roll? Committee reports.
March 8, 2022, Committee on State Veterans and Military Affairs. After consideration on the merits, the committee recommends the following. House Bill 1060 be referred favorably to the Committee on Appropriations. March 8, 2022, Committee on State Veterans and Military Affairs. After consideration on the merits, the committee recommends the following. Senate Bill 133 be amended as follows. And so amended be referred to the Committee on Appropriations with favorable recommendation. March 8, 2022, Committee on Transportation and Energy. After consideration on the merits, the committee recommends the following. House Bill 1046 be amended as follows. And as so amended be referred to the Committee of the Whole with favorable recommendation and with the recommendation that it be placed on the consent calendar March 8, 2022, Committee on Local Government. After consideration on the merits, the committee recommends the following. House Bill 1087 be referred to the Committee of the Whole with favorable recommendation with the recommendation that it be placed on the consent calendar March 8, 2022, Committee on Local Government. After consideration on the merits, the committee recommends the following. Senate Bill 72 be postponed indefinitely.
Third reading of bills, final passage. Will the clerk please read the title to House Bill 1073?
House Bill 1073, Representatives Robertson Soper, Senators Corman Donovan, concerning authorization to enter the premises of an establishment that provides services related to dead human bodies in order to perform an inspection.
Senator Donovan.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move on third reading and final passage, House Bill 1073, and ask for your aye vote.
Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, the motion is the passage of House Bill 1073. Are there any no votes? With a vote of 34 ayes, 0 no, 0 absent, 1 excused, House Bill 1073 is passed. Co-sponsors. House Bill 1073. Senators Gonzalez. The Majority Leader.
Moldy bodies.
Senator Fields. Gardner. Hanson. Will the clerk please read the title to Senate Bill 9?
Senate Bill 009, Senators Janal and Heisey, Representatives Burton Benavides, concerning catalytic converters and in connection therewith enacting measures to address the theft of catalytic converters.
Senator Heisey.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move Senate Bill 9 on third reading and final passage.
Is there any further discussion? Minority Leader Holbert.
Thank you, Mr. President. Won't be long, but yesterday I spoke about experiences my family has had with catalytic converter theft. Nothing has changed since yesterday. It will at least be weeks before my son's vehicle is back on the road, and it's because parts are not available. If members, if you had this down as a no vote, I would ask you to please look at the engrossed version of the bill. It is 8 pages long, and you will find the double underlining on every single page that contains proposed new statute, 2 through 8. That, of course, denotes Senate amendments. This is an entirely different bill than what was introduced. And again, I want to thank the bill sponsors for being attentive, for listening to concerns from inside and outside the chamber, inside and outside the Capitol. This is a bipartisan effort to deal with something that is a significant problem for the people of Colorado. I hope that it is not the only bill on the topic of catalytic converter theft. I hope to be a prime sponsor with the good senator from Arvada that on a bill that, among other things, would seek to increase the penalties for those who commit those crimes. That needs to happen too. But Senate Bill 9 is a step in the right direction, and I would be grateful if you would please consider the bill as amended and join me in voting for the bill. Thank you, Mr. President.
Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, the motion is the passage of Senate Bill 9. Are there any no votes? Senators Sonnenberg, with a vote of 33 ayes, 1 no, 0 absent, 1 excused, Senate Bill 9 is passed. Co-sponsors, Senate Bill 9. Senators Priola, Rankin, the Minority Leader, Gardner, Liston, Simpson, Jaquez Lewis, Bridges, Hansen, Henriksen, the Majority Leader, Kolker, Zenzinger, Winter, Lee, Coram, Story, Fields, Danielson, Pedersen, Buckner, Smallwood. Please add the president. Will the clerk please read the title to Senate Bill 103?
Senate Bill 103, Senators Gonzalez, Representative Tipper, concerning a remedy for improperly entered guilty pleas.
Senator Gonzalez.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move Senate Bill 103 on third reading and final passage and ask for an aye vote.
Senator Gardner.
Thank you, Your Excellency, Mr. President. Members, I voted aye in committee on this bill, and will be an aye vote again today. But it happened quickly yesterday on seconds, as is often the case, and some asked me, well, is that bill okay? Well, what's going on there? Members, even simple country lawyers have a very hard time sometimes piecing together the interrelationship between federal immigration law and state statutes. As it turns out, if you have a green card, you are a legal resident of the United States, and were to have a simple misdemeanor, one that I probably could go down the row and you know someone that did such a thing and went to the courthouse and pleaded that out or got a deferred judgment, which, by the way, a deferred judgment by the federal standards is tantamount to a plea of guilty. That's an important phrase because that basically means your acknowledgement that, yeah, you did the offense. We're not going to enter a judgment if you do your probation period. What in so many cases the federal immigration laws say is, well, if you're found guilty of a crime that has a potential penalty of a year, well, go look at the statutes. Many low-level misdemeanors have potential penalties in the past, in particular, at that level. Those people are almost universally on a probated sentence for very low-level things. So that's the sentencing range, but that's not how the federal law works. And now to the bill itself, sort of all of that as background, is when people go to the courthouse, and today this is much better on the advisement, the person in that situation often was not told, or perhaps the attorney that was representing them, or maybe they didn't have an attorney, and the DA didn't recognize in the 25 or 50 cases they had that day that maybe this person needed to be told, you do know that if you plead guilty, this can have immigration implications for you. And I would also say that a lot of cases are pleaded out very quickly, even when maybe if they were taken to trial, there might be a different outcome, simply because taking a misdemeanor like that to trial means that you spend a week at the courthouse when you have a job, and you don't want to do that. So because in the past there were not appropriate advisements, we have people who have their immigration status in question, and they say, well, if I'd known that, it would have been worth the week at the courthouse. Or at least to push back and say to the deputy DA, look, I can't do that. I've been living in this country for 5 years, 10 years. This thing happened at a restaurant or a bar or whatever, or I got into an argument with a neighbor. I know those things never happen in your world, but they happen in many other people's worlds. So all this bill does is give these people in this situation the ability to say, I was not properly advised. And even hardcore conservative, simple country lawyers believe, having represented a variety of people at the courthouse over my, well, many decades, several decades as a lawyer, on misdemeanors, those people really need to be advised and advised properly, and I've always sort of worried that maybe that doesn't happen as well as it might, and I've always been incredibly conscientious to say to people when I've had those cases, and I don't much anymore, but when I've had those cases, to say, now, keep in mind this may have implications for your ownership of a firearm, this may have implications for your licensing, this may have implications if you're seeking a job in law enforcement, it may have, for me, I had a lot over the years of people in the military who may have had one of these issues, and they needed to be advised, you know, this can have implications for your future in the military, because even if you're not found guilty, the deferred judgment will have that effect. The whole point of this, and I'm sorry for taking so long, but the whole point of this is we have a category of people who were potentially at least not properly advised, and the implications are far beyond the case at the courthouse. They affect their lives, their families, and so forth. This gives them an avenue to challenge it. I will say that this has been worked and vetted by district attorneys, the defense bar, and it is the workable solution. That is why, for all of you here and my constituents who may ask, I am an aye on this bill.
Minority Leader Holbert.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you to my friend, the simple country lawyer from El Paso County. When I, as a non-attorney, not a member of the Judiciary Committee, looked at Senate Bill 103, I had it down, my own notes, as a no vote. I want to be tough on criminals. I don't I don't want to be soft on criminals. But then I talked to my friend from El Paso County, the simple country lawyer, the only lawyer on our side of the aisle. He is a tremendous resource. And he very, very quickly pointed out, because he's known me for the 12 years that I've been in the legislature, I want to be a tenacious advocate for the Second Amendment and for people who are law-abiding to keep their Second Amendment rights. And based on that discussion, I realized that voting against Senate Bill 103 would have a peculiar result. That if someone were improperly charged, someone were subject to an improperly entered guilty plea, that he or she could lose their Second Amendment rights over something that was done improperly. Doesn't mean that they're guilty or innocent of something, but this bill has to do with an improperly entered guilty plea. And that could result improperly for someone to improperly lose their Second Amendment rights, and I'm sure others. But I am grateful to the good senator from El Paso County. There's several of them, but in this particular, he holds a law degree. Yes, he had to go to law school twice. That just means he has 2 of those law degrees. And I want to thank him, and I also want to thank the bill sponsor for being open to those perspectives. I was a no. I will be an aye, yes vote. And for those who value liberty outside of the chamber, I hope that this insight as to what the bill will actually do or not do might cause people who value liberty to reevaluate Senate Bill 103, as have I. I will be an aye vote. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Gonzalez.
Thank you, Mr. President. To the good senator from Colorado Springs, thank you so much for walking through your perspectives and your experience practicing and advising non-citizen defendants. In 1987, the Colorado Supreme Court ruled in People v. Pozo that the immigration consequences of any guilty plea were so great that every defendant should be advised, if they had those potential immigration consequences, of what those consequences would be. That was 1987. I was 4. I know. And that decision was reaffirmed by the U.S. Supreme Court in Padilla v. Kentucky in 2010. This is about constitutional advisements and constitutional protections. There's a group of people, to be clear, a smaller and smaller group of people, but a group of individuals here in Colorado for whom, because they were not adequately and properly advised of their constitutional rights, they are subject to these these adverse immigration consequences. And that's really at the heart of this bill, is ensuring that there is an avenue to vindicate those constitutional rights. You all know that I have served as a paralegal prior to my service here in the legislature to folks who find themselves in those situations. And honestly, in order to, when they find themselves in these situations where they need a remedy, this bill will provide them the opportunity to vindicate those constitutional rights. Colleagues, I appreciate the conversation we've had this morning. I've appreciated my many conversations with the DA's council and put forward amendments in order to be responsive to their concerns. I ask for an aye vote on Senate Bill 103.
The motion is the passage of Senate Bill 103. Are there any no votes? With a vote of 34 ayes, 0 no, 0 absent, 1 excused, Senate Bill 103 is passed. Co-sponsors. Senators Rankin, Gardner, Heisey, Simpson, the Minority Leader, the Majority Leader, Hansen, Rodriguez, Kolker, Donovan, Coleman, Buckner, Lee, Story, Pedersen, Fields, Coram, Priola, please add the president. Majority Leader Moreno.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the Senate take up House Bill 1017 on special orders, second reading of bills consent calendar at the hour of 9:51 a.m.
The motion is that the Senate take up House Bill 1017 on special orders consent at the hour of 9:51 a.m. This requires a 2/3 majority. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it. That motion is adopted. The Senate will take up House Bill 1017 on special orders consent at the hour of 9:51 a.m. Special orders, second reading of bills, consent calendar. Minority Leader Holbert.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the Senate resolve itself into the Committee of the Whole for consideration of special orders, second reading of bill consent calendar.
You have heard the motion. That was not a mistake. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. For the record, I vote no as well. The motion is adopted, however, and the Senate will resolve itself into the Committee of the Whole for the consideration of special order, second reading of bills consent calendar, and Minority Leader Holbert will take the chair.
The Senate will come to order. The coat rule is relaxed. Will the clerk please read the title to House Bill 1017?
House Bill 1017, Representatives Byrd and Woog, Senators Kolker and Lister, concerning an expansion of the excise tax exemption for alcohol beverages brought into the state.
Majority Leader Moreno.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move House Bill 1017 on second reading, and that's it.
There is no committee report, so is there any discussion on the bill? Seeing none, the motion before the body is the adoption of House Bill 1017. All in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the bill is adopted. Majority Leader Moreno.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move the committee rise and report.
The motion before the body is to rise and report. All in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the committee will rise and report.
There's like a general order to things. Sometimes it's special. Generally the same order.
The Senate will come back to order. Minority Leader Holbert.
Thank you, Mr. President. Your committee has met and had one bill under consideration. Would the clerk please read the report?
Mr. President, your committee of the whole begs leave to report that it has had under consideration the following attached bills, being the second reading thereof, and makes the following recommendations thereon. House Bill 1017, passed on second reading and ordered, revised, and placed on the calendar for third reading and final passage.
Minority Leader Holbert.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move adoption of the report.
Motion is the adoption of the Committee of the Whole report. Are there any no votes? With a vote of 34 ayes, 0 no, 0 absent, 1 excused, the Committee of the Whole report is adopted. House Bill 1017 passed on second reading and ordered revised and placed on the calendar for third reading and final passage. Majority Leader Moreno.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the Senate proceed out of order for consideration of a joint tribute for Mr. Patrick Teagarden.
You have heard the motion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the Senate will proceed out of order for a moment of personal privilege. Majority Leader Moreno.
Thank you, Mr. President. I request a moment of personal privilege.
Granted.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, we have a joint tribute. The House has considered this tribute first. It is now our turn, and I would ask Ms. Cole to please read the language in the tribute.
State of Colorado, the Senate and House of Representatives, convened in the 73rd General Assembly, hereby extends sincere condolences and expressions of sympathy to the Teagarden family on the passing of Pat Teagarden. Patrick Pat Teagarden was born on September 1st, 1953, in Little Rock, Arkansas, and was raised in Bethesda, Maryland, as the oldest of 4 children. Pat began a life of public service after earning his undergraduate degree and law degree from the University of Colorado. In addition to practicing law and working in real estate management, Pat served his community in many ways, including working with Congressman Tim Wirth, serving as Vice President of Government Affairs with the Denver Chamber of Commerce, and serving as Deputy Director of the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment. In 2011, Pat joined the Colorado Department of Labor and Employment as its Director of Policy and Legislation. During his time working for the Department of Labor and Employment at the Colorado General Assembly, Pat was known as one of the kindest, most honorable people working for the government of the state of Colorado. Pat passionately studied the Civil War and the history of Abraham Lincoln, and his heroes were President Lincoln, Martin Luther King Jr., John Lewis, and all who stood up for civil rights, justice, and equality. He was an avid Rockies fan as a season ticket holder. As a skier, he was once described as an elegant, unmade bed in blue jeans on the slopes. On February 4th, 2022, Pat passed away far too soon. For 32 years, Pat was a loving husband to his wife, Christine Ledding, and a loving father to his children, Leanne and Jade. The state of Colorado was blessed by the service of Pat, and he leaves a legacy that will make lives better for decades to come. The Colorado General Assembly honors the life and legacy of Pat Teagarden and his contributions to the state of Colorado and its citizens. On request of Representatives Matt Gray, Alec Garnett, Danae Esgar, and Hugh McKean, and Senators Stephen Fenberg, Dominic Moreno, Chris Holbert, and Faith Winter, given this 9th day of March, 2022, State Capitol, December, Colorado, signed by Stephen Fenberg, President of the Senate, and Alec Garnett, Speaker of the House of Representatives.
Minority Leader Holbert.
Thank you, Mr. President. A moment of personal privilege.
Granted.
Thank you, Mr. President. We had a spontaneous memorial comments when we heard the news. Now we gather together as a Senate, a chamber, to do this in a more formal way. Most of the memorials, the people we remember and speak about here in the well are members, former members of this chamber. This is a well-deserved exception to that. Pat Teagarden was every bit my equal in this building. Pat Teagarden was a friend. And for family, I think of a quote from Lincoln, because I am a Lincoln fan as well, that he spoke at Gettysburg, and I've used this when we remember fallen officers, military, but in this case, I think it needs to be referenced. At Gettysburg, Lincoln noted that the words that we elected officials might speak cannot add or detract from the sacrifices that the people in the military, the men and women who fought and died for this nation, our words can't make those sacrifices better or worse. They're just words. I'm going to try. Pat Teagarden, as the reader offered to all of us, he was something different. He was something special. And family, you know these things, but I want to assure you that everyone here, members, staff, the public, anyone who came in contact with Pat, knows this as well. He had an incredible ability to convey caring, compassion, wanting to help. And for the hundreds, the thousands of people during COVID who experienced challenges in unemployment claims, how monotonously boring are those, except for the people who are affected by that. And Pat poured himself into solving those problems hundreds, thousands of times. I would forward emails from constituents or non-constituents to Pat and say, here's another one. Not restating everything that constituent, that person in Colorado had explained about his or her situation, but here's another one, because that's all Pat needed. And late at night and early in the morning on weekends and holidays, I would get an email back, I'm on it, we're on it. We'll take care of this. And for the folks outside the Capitol who didn't know Pat, who might see the world and consider government in a way similar to that I do, it's easy for us to assume that the people who work for government aren't passionate, aren't looking to solve problems quickly. The government moves slowly. Not true. Not true when it comes to Pat Teagarden. That man cared so much about everyone. Not some, but everyone. When I was chair of Senate Business Committee, Business, Labor, Technology, my good friend from Denver who holds that position now, and on finance, Senate Finance, those committees deal a lot with the Colorado Department of Labor and Employment. Revenue's another one, but CDLE is one where there's a lot of conversation. A lot of the bills that come through the Business Committee and the Finance Committee have to do with CDLE. And Pat and I had to know each other better. We had to be able to speak frankly. He needed to come to me and say, this is good, this is bad, this will work, this won't work. And that doesn't necessarily mean how I might vote yes or no on a bill, but functionally, how does this affect that department down the street? And Pat had an incredible ability to work with people on both sides of the aisle, to represent the Hickenlooper administration for all 8 years that I was here for Governor Hickenlooper's administration and the transition to Governor Polis. Words cannot add or detract to who Pat was and the incredible, generous pouring out of his life. Thank you for giving so much of Pat to the people of Colorado and those of us who are blessed to work here. I can't make him better, but he sure made me better. Thanks, Pat. Godspeed. We love you.
Senator Winter.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to request a moment of personal privilege.
Granted.
Thank you. Pat became one of my very favorite people, not just to work with, but to be friends with, and he was a shining star in a place that is often dark. And today we are all wearing these stickers that say, "Be like Pat." And when I went out into the lobby to hand out stickers, whether you're a lobbyist or an intern or a partisan staffer or a nonpartisan staffer or elected, everyone swarmed me because they wanted to wear a sticker because they understand what it means to be like Pat and how unique and rare he was in the work we do. And so for me, what it means to be like Pat, and we should all come here every day and try to infuse his spirit and his energy and be more like Pat, is first to smile more. There's not enough smiles here. To offer grace always to everyone. To find humor and also share that humor, because we can do more work together when we find humor together. Do it for the impact and not the glory. There's thousands of Coloradans all over the state that got their unemployment insurance because of what Pat did. They're not worried about their wages being stolen because of what Pat did. They have paid sick leave because of what Pat did. And no one knows his name, but they feel more safe and secure because of the work he did. He did the work for impact and not the glory. Always offer kindness in every moment. Things get tense here, and Pat always had kindness. So let's do that more. Wake up and see the opportunity in every day. Working for the government and doing legislation can be a grind. Every single day he saw opportunity in what we could accomplish together. Wear bright colors and listen to music that makes you happy. Pat's shirts were legendary. His love of the Grateful Dead was legendary. Find what makes you happy and do more of it. And finally, he showed up every day and saw the good in everyone, regardless of your job, your position, your party. So let's show up to this building and be like Pat every single day.
Senator Donovan.
Mr. President, I request a moment of personal privilege.
Granted.
Thank you, Mr. President. When we are out in public, maybe at an Avs game, perhaps a Rockies game, perhaps even just at the grocery store or at a local parade, you don't often want to hear the "Senator" shouted, right? You're like, oh, shoot. Like, what am I going to have to hear about now, right? You're just like, I just wanted to take a couple hours off and check out. My husband and I were at a Rockies game, and we had settled down, had great seats, and we're just about to take that first sip of a cold beer, basking in that warm light that only the Rockies Stadium can deliver. And from behind, I hear "Senator," and I was like, okay, who in Denver at a Rockies game has recognized me? I'm not even in my fancy Denver clothes, you know? And I turn around, and sure enough, it's Pat. And he's come down, bounding down from a couple rows above, and he grabs Shad and I, and he goes, "You guys look great today. I need to take a picture." And we're like, no, Pat, it's fine. We don't need, no, you guys look great. I need to take a picture. He grabs one of our phones, gets down on one knee, and takes a picture of us up angle. And my husband, being the millennial he is, goes, "That's a horrible angle, Pat. Like, can't know." He's like, "No, you guys look great. You guys look great." Takes the picture, turns away, and he kind of half hops, half jogs back to his seat. That wide grin, those bright eyes, and I think hair that always had a plan of his own. And he goes and sits down, and I turned to my husband, and we just kind of said, "What a good guy. What a good guy," as he left that day. It's a simple story, right? It was just a moment in time. But it was just Pat every day, right? "You guys look great. Let me take a picture." Bounded away before we could even really tell him thanks. And now we have that picture in our photos. And he was right. The angle was better, and we did look great. But on that day, as he left, we just simply said, "What a good guy." And I say that today, now that he's left. What a good guy.
Senator Danielson.
Thank you, Mr. President. I request a moment of personal privilege.
Granted.
Thank you, Mr. President. Folks, I'm sorry that I'm not in the chamber with you today. I just wanted to say a few words about Pat. And so thank you for allowing me that grace. To the family, I know it's got to be really tough to come here today, but we celebrate Pat and his importance inside the building. And as the other speakers have mentioned to you today, how privileged and honored we all are to have been able to work with him. But I think, as they've also described, the unique thing about Pat was he was genuinely looking for the good in the situation or the work we were doing or the people he was working with. When things got tough, he did have a calm and measured approach, but he was always looking for the good in each other and also trying to find the positive way through whatever negotiation we might have been working on. It's not common, unfortunately. And he was always honest, 100% of the time, and just fun to be around and fun to work with. And so it is kind of you to come here today and allow us to speak about our friend, because the hole that he leaves in my life is tangible. I cannot imagine how difficult it must be for his family and his close friends outside the building. You have my sincere condolences and empathy as much as I can offer it. He spoke about you often, by the way, and always really complimentary. I feel like I kind of knew his girls, even though we've never met. And it was just nice to have someone who was always genuinely interested in my family, my kids, what was going on in my world. He had a genuine interest in us, which made everything very pleasant. Again, not as common as it should be inside of this Capitol. I consider Pat a very dear friend. So thank you for sharing him with us. And I understand, although I can't see you all, that a number of his colleagues are in the gallery today. I think you were also impacted in a really significant way with Pat's passing. And I want to extend my condolences to you as well. He was fantastic to work with in my capacity. I can only imagine how great it would have been to have been on a team with him day in and day out all day long. And what I do know what he meant to a number of you because we've spoken about this many times. So again, I am so very sorry for your loss. I think you all know that I do a lot of work that had to do with and impacted the Department of Labor and Employment. My focus is on workers' rights. Whether it was, one of my first attempts at wage theft, combating wage theft, Pat and I found 100-year-old law on the books, and it was his dedication, my first year in the state house, actually, that we figured out a way to pick away at one of the significant issues that allowed people to be victims of wage theft. And it was my first introduction to working closely with him. But from then on, we worked very closely together. And whether it was wage theft or caregivers, right? Medical caregivers, janitors, equal pay, farm workers, any kind of workers' rights legislation that I was trying to accomplish, I needed to work with the Department of Labor, and Pat was there. And so whether or not you agreed with me on the policy, there was a person in the department who was dedicated to, as my colleague from Westminster mentioned, protecting people out in the public, what was right and what was wrong. And he shared my values in trying to help workers in every way that he could, in every way the department should. And he was a real advocate when it was appropriate, and I will be forever grateful for that. And I think that the workers across the state will too, although we still had a lot of work to do. It was a pleasure and a privilege to work with him, and my colleagues are right. This state would be a lot different if it weren't for the dedicated public service of this extraordinary man. And I could probably go on for a very long time, but I won't. I just, I can't express enough how honored and privileged I feel, how lucky I am to have partnered so closely with such a good person, such a dedicated public servant. And I will always be a better senator for it, but I was definitely instantly a better person and a better friend for knowing Pat. And again, to the family, I hope that I can meet you sometime soon in person. And if there's anything that I or my family can do to help you through this difficult time, I hope you will reach out and let us know. So you take care and keep in touch. Thank you.
Senator Quorum.
Thank you, Mr. President. I ask for a moment of personal privilege. Granted. Sorry I could not be there today. We're dealing with issues of our own. But Patrick Teagarden, Pat, was the most incredible state employee I ever encountered. His dedication to the job, to helping the people, is unmatched. He stands at the top of this podium in the gold medal round, I assure you. I had a call just a couple of days ago that they had contacted me, and I had just sent it off to Pat just prior to his illness, and said that he would be working on it. And they called back and said, Mr. Teagarden had called us, but we haven't heard anything. Do you know the status of our claim? And I said, I do not. And they said, well, it's been 30 weeks that we've been waiting for our check. And Pat was the kind of guy that more than once, multiple times, people would call me early in the morning and say, you know what? Mr. Teagarden called me last night at 8 o'clock. And he said he can get me help. And that was just time and time and time again. He is the ultimate state employee. Matter of fact, I told him back in December on an issue, I said, this is my last year here, and I'm going to do a tribute to you as the most dedicated employee in the state of Colorado. And for his colleagues that are sitting in the room, he set the bar high. Reach for that level. go for that extra mile and do it for Pat, because that's what he would expect of you. A great man, honored to know him, but the best thing that I could call him was friend. Miss you greatly. Thank you.
Senator Janal.
Thank you, Mr. President. Ask for a moment of personal privilege.
Granted.
Thank you. My heart goes out to Pat Teagarden's family, who's here with us today, and to all of us, actually, because we are missing a dear friend and a family member. I would be remiss if I did not say similar things about the last 2 years and all the help that Pat had given me and my constituents for the unemployment issues that came up in my district. But one of the other areas that I wanted to mention was the help that I received on several bills having to do with people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. Pat had helped in regards to 2 bills that I ran, one in 16 and one in 18, which was the Employment First recommendations. What it did was it supported employment services for persons with disabilities, provider training requirement, reimbursement of vendors, and actually the act required that the Department of Labor and Employment and the State Medical Services Board make rules to allow people with intellectual and developmental disabilities who can do the same job that anyone else can that doesn't have an intellectual or developmental disability get paid the same wages. That, to me, was a big part of that. Being a success was due to Pat Teagarden. And I want to thank him for that, and I know many other people, not only inside this chamber, outside of the Capitol, thank him so much for helping the people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. Thank you.
President Finberg.
Thank you, Madam President. I request a moment of personal privilege.
Granted.
Thank you, Madam President. The weekend after Pat passed away, I think we all just had a gut reaction, and we all told stories about our dear friend Pat, and we spoke about it at the well. And I'm grateful that we're taking the time to honor him a little more formally this morning, and thank you to his family for being here today. I don't have to tell any of you this, but he loved his family, and he talked about you all the time. And in fact, he just loved family. We heard about you and how much you meant to him, but Pat also liked to ask about our families, and that meant so much to us in a world where it seems like all too often this work is transactional and we're just kind of trying to get through the work. He always would prefer to talk about family and what was happening in our lives. And I think that actually made so much of the work that we all did together that much more productive and that much more rewarding in a lot of ways. I think he also loved this institution and those who are here, and we considered, I think I can speak for all of us, in one way or another, we all considered Pat part of this family. And we're a weird family, sometimes dysfunctional, but we are a family, whether we like it or not. We probably spend more time with each other than maybe our families during session. And we very much felt like Pat was a part of it. And so many legislatures before us felt that way as well. Pat was as pure of a human that probably ever worked in this building. He was a true public servant in every sense of that concept. And when I think of Pat, I said this weeks ago when we first learned of his passing, the word that immediately comes to mind, I think, for so many of us is that he's a helper. Some people are helpers and some not so much. Pat was the epitome of being a helper in this society. And in this world, in politics, it can obviously be, like I said, transactional, self-serving, sometimes about power, your own personal agendas and advancements. And it absolutely never was for Pat. And all of us who come here with the best of intentions, it's hard to sort of keep all of that front of mind sometimes. You get wrapped up in things. It never felt like Pat did. He always knew that he was here to help. And whenever constituents reached out to us about labor issues, about employment issues, about their benefits, etc., we all called Pat. He made us look good to our constituents because we could often sort of help solve their problem, but in the end, it was actually Pat that was solving that problem for so many people. People that never knew his name. I genuinely believe the work that Pat did saved lives and saved families and kept families together. Because when you came to us, or when you came to find yourself being helped by Pat, it probably meant that society or government or another institution failed you in one way or another. And that's what Pat did, was he made sure that there was a safety net there for you and your family. And he helped so many people because of that role. I said weeks ago, if there is a heaven, it just got a whole lot more fun when Pat joined it. And I hope every single day includes a baseball game by day and a Grateful Dead concert by night. And I hope he's continuing since that day when I first said that to enjoy those baseball games and those Grateful Dead concerts. This world is so much better because of Pat Teagarden. And there's an enormous void with you gone, Pat. And as others have said, the only way we can start to attempt to fill that void is if we all are a little bit more like Pat. And we need to learn to love our families unconditionally, just like Pat did every single day, to care about the well-being of the families of others, even if we've never met them, and most of all, to help others and not ask for a thing in return. Thank you for always being you, Pat. We are all better off for knowing you. The state and this world is better because of you. And to his family, may his memory always be a blessing. Thank you.
Senator Coleman.
Thank you, Madam President. I request a moment of personal privilege.
Granted.
Thank you. Members, there's not much more that can be said about Pat that hasn't already been said. And I was, like you, blessed to know him both professionally and personally, and his family. When I first met Pat, one of the things that I told him after my election to the House was that, we finally got past this election, and I was now even more nervous about the undertaking of being a state elected official and figuring out how I was going to uphold the promises that I made to my constituents, one of them which was Pat, in order to get the work done. And one of the things he taught me, he said, Senator, and I said, please call me James. And he said, well, Senator, he said, take the work seriously, but don't take yourself too seriously. And then he leaned in and told me, he said, how many days are there in the legislative session? I said, about 120, depending on the year. And he said, I said, so that's a lot of days. I'm kind of nervous about this. And he said, I'm more afraid for the calendar because its days are numbered. Yes, dad jokes. And I proceeded to ask him, how do you find Will Smith in the snow? And I told him, I said, you got to look for Fresh Prince. See that? So we played this game. To his daughters, I'm sure you probably appreciate dad jokes. But another thing he taught me was it's nice to be important, but it's more important to be nice. And that there's a lot of people who get into these positions, they get out of these positions, they start off one way, they turn into somebody different, they forget where they come from and who they are, but just hold on to who you are. So if Pat was here, he would ask me to put my preacher voice on and ask you to look to the neighbor on your right, if you have a neighbor, and say, neighbor, it's more important to be nice. Nobody followed me. Okay, if you have a neighbor on your left, look at your neighbor on your left and say, neighbor, it's more important to be nice. This is a belief that permeates through his family and what they believe. And that being said, I wanted to ask the members of his family to stand as I say their name. We'd like Chris Letting to please stand. We'd like Leanne Teagarden to stand. Jade Teagarden to stand. Ann Doherty, please stand. Mike Doherty, please stand. Dennis Wegenick, please stand. Am I missing anybody? I believe we have everyone. Members, can we please take a moment and recognize the family of Pat Teagarden with a round of applause? It's not just Pat who did the work, but a strong family that stood by his side, as we all have a support system in order to do the work that we do. And that being said, he was not just my constituent, he was everyone's constituent, everyone's friend. And he proudly wore our flag on his shoulders. And that is why we present this flag of the state of Colorado that was flown at the Colorado State Capitol in honor of Patrick Teagarden for a life of service and achievement that is truly worthy of recognition and remembrance at the request of the Colorado General Assembly, February 4th, 2022. God bless you all. We love you.
Again, thank you all for joining us in honoring Pat, and may his work and who Pat is always live on throughout this institution. The Senate will stand in a brief recess to greet our guests. Senate will come to order. Majority Leader Moreno.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the Senate take up tomorrow's consideration of governor's appointment consent calendar, which includes members of the Colorado Healthcare Affordability and Sustainability Enterprise, or CHASE, and the members of the State Historical Society Board of Directors at the hour of 10:42 a.m.
The motion is that the Senate take up consideration of governor's appointments consent calendar on special orders consent at the hour of 10:42 a.m. This requires a 2/3 majority. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. That motion is adopted. The Senate will take up consideration of governor's appointments consent calendar on special orders consent at the hour of 10:42 a.m. Consideration of governor's appointments consent calendar. Will the clerk please read all the appointments listed on the consent calendar?
Members of the Colorado Healthcare Affordability and Sustainability Enterprise CHASE for terms expiring May 15, 2025. Barbara Carveth of Arvada, Colorado, to serve as an employee of a Safety Net Hospital in Colorado, appointed. Matthew Stephen Colosi of Aurora, Colorado, to serve as an employee of the State Department, reappointed. Claire Reed of Pueblo, Colorado, to serve as a representative of the healthcare industry who does not represent a hospital or insurance company, reappointed. Robert John Vassell of Larkspur, Colorado, to serve as an employee of an urban hospital in Colorado, reappointed. Heather Lafferty of Denver, Colorado, to serve as a representative of a business that purchases or otherwise provides health insurance for its employees, appointed. Ryan Westrom of Aurora, Colorado, to serve as a representative of a statewide organization of hospitals, reappointed. Members of the State Historical Society Board of Directors for terms expiring July 1st, 2024. Richard Benenson of Aspen, Colorado, appointed. Carlos Martinez of Denver, Colorado, appointed. And Tamara Joyce Ward of Denver, Colorado, reappointed.
Majority Leader Moreno.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move for the confirmation of all the appointments listed on the special orders consent calendar, which includes members of the Colorado Healthcare Affordability and Sustainability Enterprise, or CHASE, and the members of the State Historical Society Board of Directors.
Is there any discussion? The motion is the confirmation of all the appointments on the consent calendar. Are there any no votes? With 34 ayes, 0 no, 0 absent, 1 excused, all the appointments are confirmed. Signing of bills.
The President has signed Senate Bill 37 and 91. The President has signed Senate Bill 45 and 59.
Announcements. Senator Gonzalez.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Senate Finance Committee will meet this afternoon at 1:30 in the Old Supreme Court. We will hear confirmation hearings for the State Board of Equalization and the Advisory Committee to the Property Tax Administrator, along with Senate Bill 142, 1039, 1024, 1117, and 1034 in that order. See you then.
Senator Priola.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, I have asked to be excused Friday and Monday. I spoke with the Majority Leader and the Minority Leader. Thank you.
Senator Priola will be excused this Friday and Monday. Senator Lee.
Thank you, Mr. President. Judiciary Committee will be meeting upon adjournment in 3:52 to hear House Bills 1169 and 1150. Thank you.
Senator Janal.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Senate Health and Human Services Committee will be meeting this afternoon at 1:30. We will be hearing a number of governor appointments, as well as House Bill 1076 and House Bill 1090.
Senator Story.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just wanted to announce that Capital Development Committee will meet tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. in room 357.
Senator Smallwood.
Thank you, Mr. President and colleagues. Senator Fields and I hope that you will join us tomorrow virtually from 12:15 to 1:15 for our third session of the 2022 Colorado Children's Caucus. This session will be a discussion on ending youth homelessness in Colorado, and you should all have invitations in your email, and I look forward to seeing you on screen.
Majority Leader Moreno.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the Senate's recess until 11 a.m. today Colleagues, you do not need to return. We're just reading bills across the desk.
You have heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the Senate will recess until 11 a.m. today.